first, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to give the perspective of DG Klima on Paris and the ways forward and the climate challenges that we face. Okay, so I suppose just to put things in context, recently we had the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report, which is outlining the challenges of climate change, and it collaborates with the latest science on this, of which it's with each IPCC report, the level of uncertainty is dropping. So it's very clear that climate change is real, it's man-made, and the impacts are being felt, and the projected impacts are also going to be quite serious. And so to such an extent that we need urgent action to both mitigate our greenhouse gas emissions and reduce them, and also to work on adapting to the changing climate. The graph that just shows some of the pathways and the challenges. So on this slide, it's the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report is made up of different components. The second component of it is focused on adaptation. So within that, you have very, very detailed analysis of challenges and projected challenges, both globally but also regionally, on climate change. So particularly with, I would say, having a large impact on rural communities, agriculture, forestry areas, because the land-based areas of the world are the most vulnerable to climate change due to the dependence on water, and also, of course, but the other issue that's quite important to this is that from the perspective of development, that this is the home of the poorest of the poor in the world. So there's some very important perspectives on that. Just going along, I mean, I'm speaking to a large extent on the land-related aspects of climate, because that's my background. That's the area within the negotiations in particular that I was covering. So we have quite a few challenges. I mean, agriculture and forestry it's basically to provide an income for communities, but also it serves many purposes, both food production, bioenergy, materials. But to do this, we have the challenges of degraded soils, extreme weather events with changing climate. We have projections then of yield declines due to droughts. We have competition for land between different activities. We have a finite amount of land, and that's causing some challenges. We also then have, and I suppose this is particularly relevant to Malta and the Mediterranean countries, is we have the competition for scarce water resources. So agriculture is a big user of water, and as the projections are of scarcity of water, this will lead to more competition between the agriculture sector and other sectors for use of that water. So on one hand, we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and agriculture needs to do its part. But yet we also need to produce more food, and we also need to try to adapt to the changing climate. So it's really quite a challenge. Hopefully most people who are following this have some knowledge or have been following the Paris discussions. It was very high profile. It was a record number of world leaders attended, and I think it was quite momentous, and I think it was quite a big achievement. It was, I suppose, a 6-year effort following Copenhagen in 2009, in which it was an attempt to get a global deal, and it failed. And since then, there has been a gradual build-up in efforts, kind of step by step, to build up to Paris. And so, not to underestimate the achievement in Paris, just to put some background to this, the way the UNFCCC works is that you have 190 plus countries, or we call them parties, is just the term they use. And all agreements are by consensus. So if one party objects to something in an agreement, then there is no agreement. So this is Good in the sense that it makes sure that it's inclusive, that all parties have to be happy with the outcome. But it also is challenging because you have such a range of countries, a range of wealth, a range of demographics, a range of challenges and perspectives within this. So, as you can imagine, trying to get 190 countries to agree on a lot of substance is a big challenge. But anyway, Paris, that was managed, and some of the headline things in Paris are that there's a long-term goal to hold temperature increase to well below 2 degrees and to pursue efforts to limit to 1.5 degrees. Now, it's important to note that even at limiting to 2 degrees, that is going to mean that we will have quite serious adaptation challenges going forward. Limiting to 1.5 degrees is important, particularly for low-lying, developing the small island states in the Pacific in particular, where there is a real risk that sea level rise will be the end of these countries. So I think the 1.5 degree target is very important to try to safeguard the existence of these countries. The second thing on it was, and there's a lot more detail, but these are just some main points, was within the agreement there was the effort to try to get global emissions to peak as soon as possible with net zero emissions in the second half of the century. Now, when I say net zero, that's not exactly the wording in the agreement. The agreement is balancing emissions and removals by sinks by the second half of the century. And when I say sinks, it means removals, it means utilizing the land resource, forests, soil management, try to sequester more carbon, protect carbon to help offset some industrial emissions going forward. The next aspect was legally binding obligations to maintain successive targets and to pursue domestic mitigation measures. This is kind of, I'll follow on a little bit, but at the point we have practically every country has submitted a climate pledge for action covering mitigation or adaptation or both, which is a remarkable achievement from a wide range of countries. That was one of the things that contributed to the success of Paris, was the fact that countries before Paris had already shown their willingness to make efforts, and that contributed to the positive momentum. The next part then is that even with all the climate pledges that were there, the analysis shows that at the moment it's not enough to keep below 2 degrees. In some estimates, maybe 2.8 degrees or higher, the current trajectory. So because of that, it's important that we come back regularly and try to see where we can increase ambition. It could be maybe there's people aware of new technologies and renewables, a greater effort. So the idea is that we increase ambition with a global stocktakes. The first one to start in 2018, where parties will come back to the table and see, can they do more than their existing pledge? This is a particular area that I had a focus on in Paris, is that agriculture and UNFCCC, which includes forests and agricultural science, it's critical to remain below 2 or 1.5 degrees. Some of the main sources of global emissions are from, in particular, deforestation, which has been improving but is still a significant source of emissions. And there's also the contribution of agriculture. So between agriculture and forests and agricultural land, now, while in energy, of course, and transport and various other components contribute more than that as a whole, there is more technological solutions for them. So while somebody can have an electric car, there is yet to be an electric cow. So the situation is that it's more challenging, but nevertheless, if we are to go below 2 degrees, we will need all sectors to contribute, including agriculture and forestry. The Paris Agreement acknowledged the importance of food security, which I think was a very welcome development, so that while we are trying to work to mitigate emissions, it's also important that we make sure to safeguard food security. The importance of adaptation and food production systems was also noted, and I think that's important because if we don't adapt our systems, then we have a real risk of suffering from the impacts of climate change. Existing accounting rules acknowledge but further improvement. So some of the work was methodological work on trying to improve how we account for land emissions and agricultural emissions going forward. So there will be future work in improving that. One of the elements is that, just the main points of this summary is that the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report and previous reports show how serious the climate change challenge is, and therefore we need urgent mitigation and adaptation actions. Its important role of agriculture and forestry globally to stay below 2 degrees, while also contributing to adaptation efforts. Paris Agreement is ambitious, endorsed by the whole world, yet further work is needed. And I think this is very important. I mean, we've had a lot of positive vibes from Paris, but we need to do more. And that's why the stock take, because we're not on a trajectory below 2 degrees yet, or towards 1.5, so we need to do more. So that's just a kind of a quick snapshot of just some thoughts, and I'll just maybe to hear some of the questions from the moderator or other questions from some of the participants.
First of all, thanks a lot, Dr. Mounsey.